say less than 70.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So is ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay.
Need a water connection. Okay, well that's easy. How are you? Our celebrity status? Do you want to?
No.
Well, it was a nice article. It looked really good. So well done. We ready?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call, please.
Sure. Director Coverdale is absent. Vice President Michelson is absent. Director Flint?
I'm here.
Director Glassberg?
Here.
President Reynolds?
And myself. Pat, how about you?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brad, did you want to go now?
Sure.
All right. We have one public speaker slip. Brad, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you got?
My name is Brad Jave. I'm a general contractor and real estate broker here on the coast. I've been here for about 20 years, and in the last 10 years I've probably traded 60 water connections. And I've watched them go from 30,000 down to 13,000 and back up now to $40,000 to $50,000. And we're right now having a hard time convincing our clients to do any kind of development of their properties or properties they're intending to buy and make a home out of because of the cost of what these connections are. And I'm befuddled. You know, I go over the hill and Menlo Park, you know, has a $150 flat monthly cost and no connection fees, and I'm here, you know, just trying to get answers to why I can't drill a well or why I can't buy a water connection from you. And I know there's probably another 40 people that are wanting to get the same information of why. Or is there anything that we can do? Is there land that we can help purchase or drill new wells? Or is there anything, because in the past, our understanding was that at the time that you ran out of connections, you were able to drill wells until that resource was no longer available. And at that point, phase 2 had come through, and now phase 2 doesn't happen. So it's not happening. So I just wondered if I could get some kind of response on what to tell our clients.
Yeah. State of California is kind of out of water. It's I think that our big concern in our water connection fee is that cost reflect what it costs us to go get a new source. And as you know, here our options are we don't have a lot of options. And so different groups in California have different water options. And so you see a discrepancy in the new connection fee based on how much water is available in that community. Does that answer your question?
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the quality of water you get. It's sort of like oil. I mean, half the oil here used to be, you know, undevelopable until the price went up 4 times its value. Yeah. Is that not going to have an effect on it at the time we're trading water for $50,000 or $60,000?
I think one of the things that's a real challenge is San Francisco has gone ahead and said they don't have any unavailable water. And, that's a big statement from a big agency.
No matter how deep the wells are, is there any contribution any private citizens can make in order to make available additional wells to you?
That one I don't know enough about. Our general manager may have some thoughts. I do know, that it's something that all of California will be looking at for new options on how that will be worked. But it's a finite capacity, there's a finite supply, and some areas have more of it than others. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. I went through the disbursements for the month of June and went through and reviewed those and had no questions on that group. Anybody have anything they want pulled from the consent calendar?
No.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Can we just sing aye all in harmony? Aye. All right.
Guys have it.
Meetings and director's comments?
I only had one comment. I was going to bring it up before we actually started, but I was approached by a member of the beautification committee not too long ago, and they asked what the possibility of painting the hydrants in the downtown area would be, because apparently places like Belmont, they do little decorative, flowers or something like that on the fire hydrants, and I just thought I'd bring that up. I don't know if you've been approached about that.
Isn't that, I thought that was a job of the Eagle Scouts who compete with the Girl Scouts for designs.
I don't know that. I know the Eagle Scouts have different projects, but.
I've many times when I've seen that, it's been a community, it's been a group that
Right.
did something like that.
Yeah. Well, I
I'm in
figured,
favor.
I don't know what the protocol is. Who has to approve it? Does the fire department look at it and say, well, we couldn't find it because it now looks like it's camouflaged? I don't know.
I would, I don't think we're prepared to answer. Everybody's got an idea, and and the fire department would need to agree. So it's something we'll check into and we'll get back to you.
Okay, appreciate that.
One quick response.
We had that idea had not come to us as far as I know.
Okay. That's it for me.
I don't have any meetings or comments. On to our general business. Section A. Dave, did you want to lead us off on this?
Sure, I'll just introduce Kathleen, who's going to talk about non-well M36. We didn't catch that in our agenda. For water loss control program implementation. I may have a few comments when Kathleen gets done, but I'll let Kathleen talk.
Okay. So the water sector has developed best management practices for performing water audits, collecting data, validating data, reporting results, and there are also multiple performance indicators used to score a water supplier's performance. So in California and many other states, the practices for performing water audits have been under the scrutiny of regulatory and environmental organizations over the last decade. And some of this scrutiny is due to the California Water Conservation Act of 2009, the recent periods of drought that the United States has experienced, the high cost of treated water, the high cost of infrastructure replacement, and concerns regarding adequate water supplies. So water suppliers must invest in their own water efficiency along with encouraging customers to be more water efficient. So staff would like to complete a top-to-bottom water audit and water loss analysis using the most current American Water Works Association M36 methodology. And we would like to do this using the expert assistance of the firm Water Systems Optimization. This work would serve as the foundation for the required reporting to the California Urban Water Conservation Council and the Department of Water Resources for the Urban Water Management Plan, which we do every 5 years. So the top to bottom water audit is illustrated on page 10 of the proposal, which is attached to your staff report. It's this nice colored chart, which I'm very fond of. And it illustrates the methodology for doing the top to bottom water audit. It starts with the water supply sources and how they are metered and delivered into the district's transmission system and to the treatment plants. The water is tracked through production and into the distribution system, and finally its delivery to customers. Between the source and the customers are water losses and unbilled consumption that make up non-revenue water, which you'll find it's kind of the chart kind of reads left to right. And then there is the billed and unmetered and metered consumption that makes up the revenue water. So instead of using terms like unaccounted for water and percent water loss, the new methodology breaks down water loss into real and apparent losses, which you can see on the orange section there on the chart. So real losses are the leaking tanks, pipes, valves, and service connections in the district's transmission and distribution system. Apparent losses are the paper losses or the data handling errors, meter failures, and meter inaccuracies that lead to lost revenue. So one of the goals of the top to bottom water audit is to better understand and manage real and apparent losses in the district system. So water loss will never be zero in a water distribution system. Water loss is unavoidable, but it is important for the district to understand when it is cost effective to proactively look for leaks before they surface, or if pressure should be actively managed to prevent or reduce leakage. The new water auditing methodology includes analysis of the economic level of leakage, also known as ELL. Water Systems Optimization has the expertise and experience in analyzing both real and apparent losses that are common in the operation of water utilities. With the assistance of Water Systems Optimization, the district would evaluate the cost effectiveness of implementing a water loss control program. The proposal by Water Systems Optimization is very detailed and does a good job of outlining the approach and methodology for the water audit and analysis. So staff is asking the board to authorize the district to enter into a contract with Water Systems Optimization for the development and implementation of a water audit and water loss program. And I would like to introduce Kate Gassner. She's here with Water Systems Optimization, and she's available to answer your questions regarding the proposal, and I too am available if you have any questions regarding the staff report of the proposal.
I'd just add a comment about water loss. We have a number that we report for water loss. It actually goes into a lot of our budgeting, our planning. We get it by subtracting the water that comes out of our treatment plants, basically, put another way, we subtract the total amount of water that goes through the meters as reported by our utility billing system from the amount of water that comes out of the treatment plant. And we compare that with the water that comes in. The amount of water that comes out of the treatment plants is pretty much the amount of water that goes into the treatment plant. So there's a little bit there. But that amount of lost water, since I've been here has varied between 13% and 3%. So there have been years when we said it was 3%. That's not a very believable number. We have a kind of a low level of confidence in a number that's really important. Right now, we say it's 7%, but we wouldn't go very far in really rigorously defending that number, and I think this will give us the basis to do that. We don't really understand whether these are apparent or real losses. We know we have trouble getting the right numbers from our utility billing system, which will be something that gets investigated as part of this. To put the cost of this study in perspective, 7% water loss, if that were, let's say that's a real number, that represents a little over 50 million gallons a year. The cost, the revenue that we would get from that water right now, starting in fiscal 15, would be about $500,000. That from 50 million gallons of treated water, we get about $500,000. To buy the water to make 50,000 gallons of treated water would cost us on the order of $250,000. So these are big numbers. So any opportunity to apply a discipline that will reduce that number, and water systems optimization tells us that numbers in the 3 to 5% range are possible with a well-managed system. Any reduction pays big dividends. If we could achieve just a 2% reduction in lost water, that would mean somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. So, in the context of potential savings, the cost of this rigorous study, I think, is pretty well balanced. The payback should be pretty quick. So I would expect two things out of this. One, we'll have a much better handle on that number. And this involves everything from digging into our utility billing system to going out and attaching portable meters onto our pipes to verify the readings of our meters. So there's a real heavy technical side, and there's also kind of a data side to this. So I would expect two things. I would expect that they'll leave us with procedures that constitute a discipline for rigorously evaluating all of the numbers that go into this lost water. And then I'd also expect that we, in applying that discipline, would reduce the amount of lost water. Is that the right term? We call it lost water? Non-revenue water? What's the right term? Non-revenue water. So, I think this is an interesting, will be a very interesting project. And it will take from 18 to 24 months.
18 we're shooting for.
Yeah, 18 months. Well, when we say 18 months, sometimes it goes a little over. But it's a project that will take us quite a while, because it looks into so many different aspects of our operations and billing systems. So.
Yeah, so we'll cover like a fiscal year water audit. We'll do it on a fiscal year.
So through the chair, do you anticipate recommendations that are going to lead to more technological equipment that we're going to have to purchase in the future?
Great question. Sure.
Yes.
Hi there. I'm Kate Gasner. I'll be managing the project with my colleague Reinhard, who apologizes he can't be here. But quick answer is that our recommendations will largely involve two main fronts. One being a data validation recommendation set to say, here are the procedures and data quality checks that we recommend you doing on all of your data streams so that we have higher confidence in the real loss and apparent loss figures. So those will be very low tech, taking advantage of current data instrumentation that you already have. The other recommendations will involve actually reducing that water loss and usually don't involve huge investments beyond the scale of the value of the water that we hope to recover. So all of our analyses are going to be based on cost-effective metrics, where we only recommend you going after a certain amount of water loss, which has a value that will equate or exceed the investment. The recommendation is that what does that technology look like? It takes two forms usually. And first I'll focus on the real loss issue, the physical losses from the distribution system. Those we usually tackle in a number of ways. The two most common ways are leak detection surveys, acoustic monitoring of your system, where we hire someone to basically walk the system and listen to every appurtenance, every valve, service connection, hydrant, and they're able to tell if there's a leak that hasn't surfaced yet in the distribution system. What our analysis is able to do, the data analysis before we get to that survey, is say what recovery can we expect from a survey like that? What's the amount of water that's susceptible to that kind of activity? So that's a technology that we would apply, a survey of the system, and our analysis will allow us to pretty confidently say this is the percentage of the system that we recommend you cover, or this is the frequency at which we recommend you cover your system. That's a technology we'll recommend to a certain level of frequency or intensity. And the other approach that we often take for this physical loss recovery is pressure management. Pressure and leakage have really direct correlation. So if you reduce pressure by 10%, you'll recover 10% of your leakage losses. So that's something we'll also play around with. But again, that's often settings on pressure reduction valves and switches and operational adjustments, as opposed to big capital improvement plans or replacement of pipe. We really like to do these much more maintenance-oriented recommendations before we talk about big investments. And then on the apparent loss side, the technology there will just be looking at your meter testing programs and how you take stock of your meter's accuracy, because that plays into a lot of our water balance work too. But again, that's not new technology. It's just how do we treat the current technology we have to optimize its value as a really important piece of the system, tracking what our customers use.
Great. Yeah, no, I like the cost effectiveness part of that. It only makes sense.
A couple of questions. One is, I noticed as I read through the proposal that there are a number of areas in which you're going to be relying on CCWD staff to provide information, resources, or support in some of the testing that you might be doing. And I'm just wondering if you have some sense about what kind of imposition that might be on our staff, because I feel like our staff's pretty overloaded already.
Yeah, that's a great question, and something to highlight. I think in talking to David and Kathleen, we've highlighted that as a part of this contract. What the flow of our work often follows a general rule of data collection, which usually isn't that intensive. We give parameters on the time period that we'd like data, and then we go behind the scenes and we try to make sense of it. And a lot of our value is actually in our naivety to say, okay, we don't know the complexities of this system, but let's map it out. Let's go through all of the quality checks and quality assurance measures that we do. And then we'll usually come back and say, we have a variety of questions. Can you help us with these anomalies? Can you help us with a variety of things that we may not understand, just applying our usual metrics? And that's where we'll need insight from the staff. So helping us through the data crunching is one piece, usually not that time intensive. The things that will demand a little bit more of the staff will be setting up on-site investigations. A lot of the work is data validation. I would say most of it is on our side. And then every once in a while what we'll do is we'll have interactions with the system to either validate what we're finding on the data front or get more information about accuracy. And so in this case, some examples of that will be to take a look at those treatment plant meters and say, okay, for this water balance, the big line items here, what we're calling our baseline, what is inputted into the system, that represents 100% of our water. And then from there we start sort of subtracting volumes that we know are either withdrawals or known uses, and then we're left with this water loss volume. before we say that we're 100% confident in that baseline number, we're going to investigate those meters really thoroughly. And so what we'll want to do is do some on-site testing. Something like that will require a day of staff support in the field, so that we're not, you know, messing with the treatment plant's operations, but also that we're properly training and engaging the staff on exactly what we're doing and exactly what we're finding. So there will be spikes in involvement, but the burden of analysis and documentation and the real crux of the work is very much on our hands.
My second question was actually for you, Kathleen, and without any intent of impugning WSO at all, my question is more about what process was followed at staff level to ultimately deduce that this company was the company you wanted to bring to the board. What was our process?
Very good. So through the different organizations, California Urban Water Conservation Council, through committees that I'm on, utility committees, through training I've gone through with AWWA and involvement in other studies that water system optimization has been involved in, I've become very familiar with them as a firm and their specialty in this, and have seen other consultants, and water systems optimization is by far the leader in this methodology. And most of the agencies I've talked to that have used them have been very pleased with them and actually plan on using them again for further analysis into their water auditing process. So it's a very specialized, kind of engineering firm that it isn't easily compared to other consultants who might do similar work. And so that I've been involved in this now since usually like 2007, I would say, is around 2006, 2007. I've been following this new methodology and the implementation of it, and have been very impressed with water systems optimization. They've held a lot of training and been involved with AWWA, with the California Urban Water Conservation Council, the Aqua group. They come very recommended.
So, just on a general level, not even talking about this specific contract or the need for it, would we internally ever go through an RFP kind of a process, requesting proposals from a variety of companies that might be interested in?
I'll respond to that. For professional services, we sometimes do that. We're not obligated to by our policy or by the law. The law actually prohibits us from selecting certain consultants, and it may be engineers, but we generalize to professional services. It prohibits us from selecting on the basis of price. So it's always just a matter of, when we select professional services, it's a matter of qualifications. So if it's a larger project, so it varies. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of my call. For some things, for a big engineering design project, we may solicit and interview different firms. For something like this is all these guys do. They own this. They own this technical niche in our industry. Basically, when there's a seminar about how to do this, it's Reinhard Sturm, who runs this company, that's teaching everybody else how to do it. They've done it. So, they're clearly an excellent choice. There are some engineering companies that are trying to get into this, but they're having to learn from WSO. So we have the flexibility to select the best. I don't think it costs any more. All of these, when we do professional services contracts, they're all time and materials. So, and everybody's hourly rates are, similar. And again, it's, you want to get a good product and not necessarily, we're not looking at the price really. I mean, it's a reasonable price. So this question comes up pretty often. Some people are more interested in it than others, but I've been pretty steadfast in kind of defending the approach of we want the best qualified. Whatever we do, we'd really like to have the best qualified firm, and we feel like we're able, in this instance, we're able to identify that firm without, going through much of a process.
That's helpful, because
Right.
my issue wasn't, well, I'm always concerned about the price, but my issue wasn't, in this case, as much about cost as just in general, what is our process? And obviously, if we're gonna do something, we wanna do it with the best that's available, but sometimes you don't know that. And that's why I was asking, what process do we use to determine that? So, thank you, appreciate the response.
As a point of reference, I helped a utility recently purchase acoustic data logging, leak detection equipment, and the hardware was $150,000. And the district will operate it themselves with their own staff. And that's no interpretation of the data, that's just buying the box of hardware and giving it to the staff. And that was, so.
Good.
Doesn't seem like a bad deal. I told Kathleen to try and pilfer all the equipment they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe off the minutes on that
Oh,
comment.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, part of the value of this, I may not have emphasized it enough, is this process will help educate and train staff. And so this is like a foundation for us to be able to carry on, because this isn't something you do once. This is something we will continue on year after year, doing the water audit, and then there's different things you do maybe less frequently, like a component analysis of your real losses. You may only do every few years, but it's important to have that foundation and the validity of your data and your processes, so that when you move forward, you're confident in your results.
So it continues on.
It continues on. It's not like a one-time. So we're hoping that a lot of this will be training of staff to carry this forward.
That's when they'll come back and want the $150,000 worth of equipment.
Yeah, that's when we ask
And I
for
will
coffee.
remind you of that.
Yes.
More flow meters and more equipment.
It's really cool stuff. Gentlemen, any further thoughts?
Not for me, it sounds like pays for itself, really, over time.
Yeah.
Plus, if it helps us meet any of our, the urban water management plan, policy goals, any of that,
Wasted water's never a good thing. All right. Am I allowed to make motions? All right, I'll make a motion for approving this project.
Great, I'll second that.
That's what we needed. Joanne?
Yes, Director Coverdale is absent, Vice President Michelson is absent, Director Flint,
Aye.
Director Glassberg,
Aye.
President Reynolds.
Thank you for coming,
Thanks a
for
lot.
presenting.
Thank you.
Patrick, it looks like you're up.
What, you want to do this? Oh, you can, go ahead.
I'm waiting for somebody in the state of California to explain the GAN initiative so that
Well-
anybody understands it. After all the years I had to try and do it poorly.
I'll start with an overview. This is something that the district needs to do every year. It's basically set its appropriations limit. And what this is this is a spending limit that applies only to the proceeds of taxes. So it doesn't apply to water sales revenue, it's only the proceeds of taxes. And that's why in the staff report, it looks like I said, that this district never really approaches its appropriations limit. So this is kind of an exercise that we do every year. And it's been going on for a while. So once we have our appropriations limit, which we set every year, then we need to do some calculations based on data that Department of Finance provides to the district. And it's based on last year's appropriations limit, the changes in population, and the changes in per capita income based on that data. And then there's a set formula that you plug those numbers into to get your new appropriations limit for the next year. And then there's some procedural requirements as well, which is you prepare the notice of determination, I think is what it's called. Notice of determination of appropriations limit, you need to post it for 15 days before it's done, so, and I believe that has been done. And then you would adopt a resolution, which is in your agenda packet, that would approve the new appropriations limit. So with that, we would recommend that you adopt the resolution establishing the appropriations limit applicable to the membership years of fiscal year 2014 and 2015.
I'll move to approve resolution 2014-04.
I'll second.
All right, I'll agree. Can I fill this thing out as we go
We'll complete it with your signature.
with a special quill pen? Okay. So we'll say aye on that.
It's a resolution, let's do
Oh,
roll
yeah,
call.
there we go. Please call.
Director Flint?
Aye.
Director Glassberg?
Aye.
President
Aye.
Mills?
Patrick, thank you. Dave, do you want to
Sure.
Coastside resolution?
Okay, the water supply agreement that the wholesale customers negotiated with City and County of San Francisco in 2009 lays out a process of allocating costs between wholesale customers and allocating costs to the wholesale customers. And the water supply agreement also specifies that in the event of disputes about cost allocation based on the audit that BOSCA does each year, those disputes would be subject to arbitration. And in general, over the history of this relationship between BOSCA and the city, there haven't been too many disputes that needed to go all the way to arbitration, but that occasionally happens, and there may be one brewing now. An example, I think, of where such a dispute might arise would be the allocation of assets and the costs related to assets between different city functions, only some of which relate to the cost of providing us with water. So when you look at some of the things, some of the parts of the water system up in the Sierras, for instance, the mountain tunnel, which we discussed a few meetings ago, that is an asset for power generation as well as an asset for water supply. Now, at San Francisco goes in and says, well, we think that's 75% water system. And we may disagree. And that allocation has a pretty significant impact on the cost that they would include in the wholesale revenue requirement. So that's kind of the flavor of what BOSCA is looking at. It's way more complex than that. People at BOSCA spend a lot of time, and they have a lot of expertise at this. It's one of the really valuable services we get from BOSCA. So what BOSCA is asking for is that the wholesale customers delegate to BOSCA, the BOSCA board, the authority to arbitrate these disputes on behalf of all of us. And if a majority of BOSCA agencies approve resolutions such as the one we recommend and propose here, BOSCA will have that authority. Right now, I guess each of us individually would have the right to take issue with San Francisco's calculation of the wholesale revenue requirement and take them to arbitration. And presumably those agencies who don't delegate the authority to BOSCA would still have that opportunity, although, I don't know why they would want to do that. They don't. Most of the member agencies defer to BOSCA, given the expertise required to take something like this up. So we're recommending that the district respond positively to Bosca's request and approve a resolution delegating authority to Bosca to initiate, defend, and settle arbitration related to the water supply agreement with the city and county of San Francisco. So that's the recommendation. In a related action, Bosca CEO Nicole Sankola has asked that each agency designate a representative to a committee that would advise the CEO and through the CEO of the Bosca board on matters related to this arbitration. This is the kind of the process we set up when Bosca was negotiating the water supply agreement on our behalf. I sat on a committee, we call it the Water Supply Management Representatives, that advised Bosca on negotiating strategy. So that action is something that the president can do, or we can do at the staff level. It's not a board action, but we're recommending that the president designate me as the representative to that advisory committee. So the action recommended is that you adopt the resolution 2014-05. I won't read all the title again.
Any questions?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how many wholesale buyers are there that they represent?
26, 27, depends on whether you count some little podunk outfits. I mean, other than us.
No, I have no questions. I don't have a problem with this.
I have a question, and Pat, this may be for you. The last statement before passed and adopted, this appointment shall continue through the term of agreement. That appointment is that this contract or delegation becomes null and void at the will of the board. So if we want out, we can just have a board meeting and say we want to nullify, we no longer want to be represented by Bosca.
Yeah, you would revoke the appointment of Bosca as if you
Okay.
were acting on behalf of the district for the mandatory, the issues that deal with the mandatory arbitration provisions in the water supply
Right.
agreement.
Okay, all right, that was my only question. I just wanted to make sure a get-out clause was clean if we disagreed.
Yes.
That's all.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Okay, I'll second it. It's a resolution, so we want to be resolute.
Director Flynn?
Aye.
Director Glassford?
Aye.
President Reynolds?
Aye. Well, you weren't looking, I signed this one.
I note that we need to correct a typo in the title of the resolution. It should say 2014-05.
Oh,
And then there was one other item that your general manager mentioned, and that is the appointment of your general manager as the district representative for this water supply committee, I think is what it's called. the
Right.
committee.
Advisory committee.
Advisory committee. Is that something that the president would like to do at this time as well?
I'd like to, yes, you can be resolute on that one as well.
You don't have to bang the gavel or anything.
Oh, well, why not? There you go.
That makes it official.
Well, shouldn't I be
So,
knighting him? You kneel down and...
That's not religious. I think we're all do that.
That would be reflected.
Oh, that is that.
And that would be reflected in the minutes that the president appointed general manager.
And the word still.
All right, so now it comes to the big one.
Okay. This item is a proposed response to the 2013-14 San Mateo County Grand Jury Report. The San Mateo County Civil Grand Jury on May 19th issued a report which I distributed to the directors shortly after we received it. The report focused on all 23 special districts in San Mateo County in an evaluation of, according to the title of the grand jury report, website transparency. So if you read the grand jury report, which is really abbreviated, they start out talking about the desirability of transparency and the transparency of the websites and their evaluation of the 23 special districts. There are no district-specific findings, but ultimately they come down to the findings and recommendations. Findings F1 through F8 and recommendations R1 through R7 that are on page 4 of the grand jury report. As I pointed out in my email distributing this, they started out looking at website transparency, and they really kind of went off into special district governance. And again, there were no findings related to the actual quality of special district governance. The findings only related to districts' participation in voluntary certification programs offered by the Special District Leadership Foundation, which is, I think, affiliated with the California Special Districts Association. And the bulk of the grand jury report in terms of mass is all these printouts from the website of the California Special Districts Association and the California Special Districts Leadership Foundation. So the law requires us, as I pointed out and as kind of stated in the transmittal letter for the grand jury report, to respond to the grand jury report within 90 days, and 90 days would be April 18th, I think. I'm sorry, August. I got the right starting letter. August 18th. We have to respond by August 18th, and we have to say whether we agree or disagree with each finding and whether we will have implemented, will implement, will further study, or will not implement each of the recommendations. So we're required to respond. We are not required to do what they recommend, but that would be our option. So I've proposed a response. For most of the findings, they're all stated in a way that we essentially could not agree or disagree with, because they don't say anything about Coastside County Water District specifically, and we really don't know about any other of the 22 other special districts. So, we couldn't really respond to the findings other than to say they were correct or incorrect with respect to Coastside County Water District. And we could go through them in detail, but I think I could just summarize by saying we don't participate in any of the SDLF programs. I think when it comes to transparency, we've been committed for a long time to transparency, and we already meet most of the criteria established by the Special District Leadership Foundation for transparency, and whether we want to go all the way. I think we can attain that certificate of transparency. There are some things in there that we may not want to do. A salary survey every 5 years is one of the things that's on their checklist, and we've discussed that, and that may be something we don't want to do. If we don't want to do it, I'm not sure whether we can get the certificate or not. But I don't think there's any respect in which our transparency falls short of what a good example of a public agency should be, and there's certainly no finding related to that. So I think that with respect to the recommendations, I've laid them out. I think our website certainly complies largely with, and by May 15th, 2015, 6 months from the grand jury report, it will comply. So I don't have any problem with that. We already have a professionally developed and managed website. We have a firm that does that. We keep it current, which is one of the other recommendations. Now, when it comes to these voluntary programs of SDLF, they involve significant commitments of, not just staff time and district resources, but director time. So those aren't something we just want to step into lightly. I don't think that it's certainly possible, and I think in our case, we're an example. It's possible to have a well-managed district which does not participate in these voluntary programs. And I think that if we wanted to do them, if there were interest on the part of the board in having us participate in these, and there may be good reasons to do that, we ought to address it on a policy basis and say it'll be the policy of the district that will seek these programs. Otherwise, it just becomes sort of a flurry of activity to impress the grand jury, even though I don't think there's anybody there to impress anymore, and it dies out. So the responses, I have to credit Patrick for softening my initial response, which was kind of like, no way, we don't have to do that. We're going to study, and I think it's appropriate. I think that's a much better response. That it does require further analysis, and I would be happy to make a presentation to the board about these programs. They have good aspects. I mean, they're good. There's good training available through CSDA. I attended a great CSDA program on strategic planning with Director Feldman a couple of years ago. So I think the offerings are good. Whether we want to go as far as to meet all the requirements to attain these distinctions and then maintain them, I think is something worth looking at. But we ought to do it with our eyes open with respect to the commitments involved, so we don't commit ourselves to doing something that we don't really need or want to do. So our responses to the recommendations about these programs say that we will study them further. So I think in order to be true to our responses in good faith, at some point in the next few months, we'll have an agenda item that talks about these programs, and the board may want to pursue some of them. But I think you should understand what they require for board members as well as for the staff. So that's a summary of the response, of the proposed response. The law requires that our response to the grand jury be approved by the board at a public meeting, so you have the opportunity to do that tonight. I would take the proposed responses and dress them up on our letterhead to make it all official. If there's something you'd like to discuss further, or you'd like to change our responses or hear more about these programs, we would have time to do that at the August meeting and still meet the deadline for response. So
I think what you're suggesting as a response makes sense. It's balanced, it's reasonable, and it doesn't commit us to tremendous amounts of financial impact and time impact unless we choose to. So, I support your response again.
I concur with that.
The only comment I'd make is like on F5 where you say the district has not completed this program. I'd love to add the word has not completed this voluntary program or this voluntary self-accredited, self-established program. In other words, I'd like to make it more clear to the reading public that this isn't a mandatory requirement that we're just not doing, but to say, at this time, we've not chosen to follow this self-accreditation or voluntary self-accreditation, to make it absolutely clear that this is not a law, this is not a requirement, this isn't even a best practices, this is something that is being suggested. Is that a reasonable? So page 1 of your response,
So
F5.
in each case, we would, where we say the district
has not completed this voluntary self-accreditation program.
well, there's the only thing I'm not sure about there is self-accreditation, because the Special District Leadership Foundation actually does vet your responses, so it's not technically.
But are they accredited by anybody?
Well, I mean, it's.
They're not.
I don't know
right?
that I would call it, I mean, self-accreditation just, it seems to
Okay,
imply.
so you could
it's
leave
we're
that out.
accredited because we say so.
Yeah.
I'm good with voluntary.
Okay, let's put in
So
voluntary.
in each case, we'd put in
the word
voluntary.
voluntary,
Right.
yeah. Because I would hate for the public to read that out of context, saying we chose not to do something.
I want to be transparent.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay,
so that we would make that change in,
Yeah.
in each of the
yeah.
findings where we say the district has not done this.
Yeah.
F5 through F8.
Yes.
Otherwise, I would be happy to have a heads-up vote. I mean, I know it's not a resolution, but I could say I was in favor of putting this out on letterhead and sending it out.
I think
I agree.
if you just, if we have a motion to approve the proposed
Whose turn is
response
it?
as modified.
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the response as modified in open discussion in an open meeting.
Second.
Now we get to say aye in harmony.
I don't have a harmonic voice, but I'll say aye.
Okay,
I hope for the best.
all right.
More of a rap kind
And will next year it be a different topic that the grand jury will be reviewing?
Yes, whether it will have anything to do with us,
Oh, so so
Could
they
be
don't look
anything.
at special districts every year?
no. They can pick any topic they want to do fact-finding on.
Oh,
Fact-finding, whatever you call it.
They love
Okay.
school districts. They love to pick on school districts.
oh, I didn't know. Okay.
I think the reason, I might have commented on this, I think the impetus for this focus came from problems that two special districts in San Mateo County had, the Mosquito and Vector Control District and Mid-Peninsula Water District, both had visible embezzlement scandals that kind of shone us light on special district governance. In fact, there was some attempt to dissolve the Mosquito and Vector Control District. Not so with
Good reason for them to look at it.
So was it, I mean, I took those as cautionary tales and went to an excellent session organized by Hanson Bridget a couple of weeks ago about basically following up on those problems and talking about how to try to avoid them and how to manage them if you found yourself in that unenviable situation. It's one of those things where as a general manager you just say, oh man, that is not the call I ever want to get.
Makes retirement look good.
You really do not want something like that to happen on your watch, and I think that's what the grand jury was looking at, what motivated it.
All right, do you want to introduce the next one?
Yes. As a member of the California Special Districts Association, we have the opportunity to cast the district's vote for the Region 5 C Director. And you have in the staff report everything we got on the topic. There are 3 candidates. If the board wishes to designate the district's vote for one of these candidates, we would so report to CSDA within the August 1st deadline. And the staff has no recommendation.
Thanks.
I'm not confused, but I'm looking for the third,
There's 2 out of the
Two
3
of the
submitted
candidates
as
submitted
statements, so
statements.
I'm in
Who's the
favor of
third?
not
They
voting.
didn't submit a statement.
I'm in
The
favor of
names
not
on
voting
the
for the person who
ballot.
didn't submit one.
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
I was in favor of not voting for the person who didn't submit
Oh,
one. I moved to pick one, huh?
Does anybody know either of those candidates?
No, I don't. Dave, do you know either of these
No.
individuals?
I don't know 1 and 2.
Oh, I see. Okay, now I understand what you said.
It seems like, Mr. Ferrante has been pretty involved with CSDA.
Okay, I'm in favor.
He's the incumbent, too.
Yeah, and he's currently on the board of directors as board secretary.
Done?
Do we have a sense that CSDA is well run?
Yeah.
You're not a target of the grand jury, are they? That wouldn't be our grand jury anyway.
All right. Do we need a resolution or proposal, or can we just all say?
Do we
Vincent?
need a motion in a second for to cast a vote? I didn't see that in the materials.
We can further.
If the board want to cast their vote, I would recommend you do it by motion second.
Okay.
I guess that's like, all right, then I move that the board vote for Vincent Ferrante for the California Special Districts Association Board of Directors, or whatever region that was, Region 5.
I'll second that.
All right. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Perspective idea.
I will complete that.
Vincent isn't in the
Right. See, it's a big child molester.
So I have a comment on this next one, Dave. I know that if he was here, Ken would want us to use water permeable concrete or asphalt. And I know that you would want to ask Andrini to do that. We know he has the permeable concrete or asphalt project. Big proponent of it. But only if it'll carry the truckload.
I'm going to let Joe Gustino talk about this project and how we've approached it to this point. I think if the board wants to have us go back and change the project documents to make that part of the spec, that's, I think that's something you can do. And it's not something that we thought about. But I'll introduce Joe Gustino, who's looking professorial.
In character.
I have to tell you that he's getting,
I need to patches on my own.
yeah, he's getting ready to play Fagin in the Coastal Repertory Theater's production of Oliver coming up, so.
You don't have to make excuses for my appearance.
I think it's great.
Wait till he shows up with
Yeah.
a top hat.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it.
We had our tickets.
I am too. The road lead, I don't know if any of you have been up to Nunes, water treatment plant. It's a pretty steep grade going up there. And that road was originally supposed to be temporary. So they didn't invest a lot of lot of money in this road. It's just 4 inches of engineered fill, compacted, and then they oiled it with the anticipation that that large open space that we traverse would soon be developed, and the developer would put in a nice access road. That never occurred. And the road takes its toll, because it's just oiled sand, essentially. And we have to patch it periodically, about every 2 years. We wait till there's enough potholes to make it worth it, and then we go up there and fill the potholes. Or when we sense that the trucks are starting to have a hard time, and they do. And the chemicals that go up there, we do not want them to be spilled. Absolutely not. So it's just about time we just hunker down and fix this road to good DOT standards, so that the trucks that access it can do so safely. So we had our district engineer come up with a spec, and permeable asphalt was unfortunately not in the spec, although it doesn't really lend itself to, there's so much open space around it, the ratio of just the road's open space is pretty tremendous. So if the board would like, we can pursue that, but as it is, it is to me a large ticket item of $95,000. We had allotted $100,000 in our budget to do this, 5,000 of which went for engineering. So this is before you to either approve or not. We got 2 bids. It was sealed bids. We only had two bidders, and Greenie came in with a low bid for approximately $80,000. But what we would like to, and this was for about 800 feet. And the original engineering estimate was, okay, 800,000 feet, that'll probably be about $100,000. Well, as it turns out, since this is a little bit less than $100,000, we were hoping to actually spend the full $95,000, and so we would like to pretty much go as far as we could with that amount of money.
So, question?
You go for it.
The 95,000, does that cover 800 feet, or
No.
or that
No,
or the
the
79?
800 feet is the
cover?
79.
Okay, so what do we think we'll get with the 95?
We might get another 100 feet.
And it's totally 1,500 feet long? The access road, it looks
But
like?
part of it has already been done.
I see.
Part of this was done about 5 or 6 years ago. The bottom part of the access road was deteriorating terribly, and so we had another contractor come in and do that part of it.
So with this contract, the entire road will be finished?
We might be able to get all the way to the top of the road. I'm hoping that we can. And then once we get to the top, it levels off. It's not as serious.
Sounds bad. I think in the interest of waving Ken's flag for him, if I have no idea, it's Ken's expertise, not mine. And I think it's worth asking the question if it can be done for the 10% increase. I certainly think that if Ken were here, he would support having permeable. I would support it. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think we would support it. I'll be very clear. I have no idea. If it's 3 times the money, I think we're all in agreement. That's not okay.
And I'm, at this point, since I haven't really pursued it, I'm not sure as to how robust that is and how well it would
And I would
fare.
defer if it won't take the truck traffic, it defeats the purpose.
Right.
Well, I would also have a legal question. We've gone to bid.
I think we would have to start over. I
Yeah.
think we'd have to go back, create new project documents, rebid the project. I don't think we could just
Okay.
do it. So if that's, I mean, if that's, and we really don't, none of us knows anything about the suitability of permeable, I don't even know what permeable asphalt is. There's permeable concrete, there are various products that, asphalt products. So we have not, we've not investigated that. We're not subject to any requirements. I mean, now if you build a house any place in Half Moon Bay, you have to leave a certain amount of permeable surface. So you have to do things like pavers with spaces, or that lawn driveway, or even gravel, in order to meet those requirements. We don't have any such requirement for this project. But I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I believe that if we wanted to do that, we would need to start over. We'd have to go back, look at the suitability of that material for this application, create new project documents, and rebid. And we can do that if that's the board's.
No, my comment only is that, I would support the permeable surface, but because of the steepness of the road, I don't know how effective or how permeable that would be anyway.
How
Seems
much
like
benefit you'd get
I
from
think the
it.
water's still gonna run off at a really
Most
fast
certainly
rate.
will.
And I think we're obligated to do some kind of impoundment and contain the runoff that's coming off of that surface anyhow. I think that's county, the county requires, we handle storm
We're
drain water.
repaving existing, so we probably don't have to do any changes, right?
There are already turnouts for water, so
But
it
there's
doesn't,
impoundment
it
then.
doesn't build up.
Yeah.
So there's a deluge at the bottom of the hill. There's a number of spurs on that road that shed the water off to the sides.
Could we go forward with this one as is, and in the future, for future paving projects, make the inquiry as to getting it looked at for permeability?
Absolutely.
Or even structure future bids so that there's a bid of regular and then an alternate bid of if the permeable, I don't know enough about permeable.
Yeah, I
for
don't
or
either,
against
but
it,
I'd love to see us
There are
incorporate
ways of
that in the
structure.
future so that we are being more aggressive about being good stewards of the land. We need that water to go into the ground, not run over it. So we need a motion. I think I did the last, who did the last? Okay, I'll do this
I
one.
did the last one.
All right, I'll do this one. I make a motion, we award Antrini Brothers the paving job for the full $95,000 as far as they can stretch it.
Second.
All right. I'll say aye.
Oh, this involves money, let's do a roll call.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Director Flint?
Aye.
Director Glassberg?
Aye.
President
Aye.
Rice?
All right, recycle. Yes, well. All right.
Okay. On 10th of June, I received from Rob Hopkins, the new manager of Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside, the email I attached to the staff report. And the information in the email is the extent of my knowledge about the new, he calls it the Reformed Recycled Water Committee. I think this is an initiative of the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside Board of Directors. The Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside directors involved are Scott Boyd from Montero, Rick Lohman from Granada, and Alan Alifano from the city of Half Moon Bay. So there's 3 SAM directors, and they have written this email inviting the district, both water districts, Montero Water and Sanitary District and Coastside County Water District, to appoint somebody to participate. So that is the opportunity that you have. I've told them that once the board designates somebody to participate, that we'll be able to engage in the scheduling discussion that's kind of been going on now.
I'd love to see a board member with the experience of the prior history participate, but I have a pretty good guess as to.
It'd be fun just for the fireworks.
Yeah, flames.
I think if there's, I have a number of opinions, some of which I wouldn't express, but I think that any opportunity, if this is one, to kind of hit the reset button on this discussion would be good for everybody.
I'm hugely in favor
Yeah,
of our
I think
points.
any opportunity that we could have to foster cooperation among the agencies to look at water resources, including recycled water, on a community-wide basis. I mean, I think it's worth a shot, and I would encourage whoever is, and I'll participate in that vein, and I would encourage everyone else to try to do so as well.
It's a subject near and dear to my heart. I'm a big fan of it. Gentlemen, do either of you have a thought, want to do it?
No, I think it's definitely something worth doing.
Yeah.
And I agree with the reset part.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I would volunteer for it, but I think that there is a value to having past experience and,
That may not
and-
accomplish the reset, but
but perhaps Director Coverdale, I think, would be a great choice for that. He's not here to defend himself or deflect the praise, but, I mean, we've attended meetings together to discuss exactly that thing with other districts. So, I mean, to me, he's the likely candidate.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'll listen.
That's what he gets for not being.
I'd also be willing to put myself down as an alternate if he can't make it or doesn't go. Can we do that? Just point a member
I think
and
you
have
can
an
do
alternate.
anything you
Perfect.
want.
I like it.
All right.
So the direction from the board then is that it's, I don't think they.
Yeah, I was just going through I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just going through past staff reports for how the board sets its own committees, and the practice is that the president of the board makes the appointments to the board-run committee, and this just looks like it's a committee where there's going to be a Coastside representative, so I think the president of the board could make that appointment as well, and if that's not sufficient for whatever Sam is looking for, they can let us know. But, I mean, I'm just reading stuff, it doesn't look like it's a board action, but it's hard to tell what their objective is. So I mean, one of the things I did think about is, and I don't know if, David, you've had any discussion, but is the idea that for this to be a legislative body for purposes of the Brown Act, this committee, I don't know. And if the goal is to not have it be a Brown Act, a committee subject to the Brown Act, would be actually better for the board president to just make the appointment as opposed to a board action.
I see what you're saying,
Um,
okay.
But again, it's unclear to
Well,
me.
we okay then if I
So I
appoint
think
Ken
that-
Coverdale, and if he's unwilling or unavailable, I'll be the alternate?
I think
How's
that's
that?
I like it.
I concur.
Okay,
That's great.
so done. Do I get to pound the gavel? All right. Dave?
Okay. General manager's report. Drought conditions update.
Yeah,
It's a familiar refrain.
it was an interesting
I think-
letter.
Yeah, I think that SFPUC, each successive time that I listen to Steve Ritchie talk about their situation and how they look at it, I feel like I get a little more insight. I mean, he's always said, we think we're okay. And I've always assumed that they're not just throwing darts at the board. They have analyzed this 8 ways from Sunday, and they're just not really talking about that. I got a little better flavor of that on a Thursday when Steve Ritchie talked to the Bosca group. Somebody who seemed to have some insight said, oh, well, you're looking at an 8.5-year drought scenario, and what if the next 3 years are 3 1977s? And he said, oh, well, we've looked at that, and we think we would be okay through that with our current storage. So I have more confidence that we're not going to get surprised all of a sudden in August or September with mandatory rationing. That said, they're very clear that if it doesn't really start to rain, we're gonna have to do something pretty drastic. So I think if we get into November, December, we will be looking at mandatory rationing, probably at the 20% level, which means a big, really big cutback for us. So I think it is important for, for us to keep telling our customers that we do need to conserve. Nobody really likes that message. Everybody says, well, now you're asking me to conserve, you're raising my rates. But the consequences of failing to conserve sufficiently are so dire for us. I mean, if by conserving we can keep ourselves, kind of on the voluntary side of this voluntary mandatory thing, we're all so much better off. I mean, as soon as we go to mandatory, there will be penalties, and penalties are, if people think that, that our rates are high, they've seen nothing compared to the penalties, which may go up to, say, 7 times the rate we normally pay San Francisco for water, which will have to be recovered from customers who go over their allocation. So it will be a very unpleasant time. So, I think we're doing okay was the message we've gotten, but we need to really keep focusing. And now is the time when we have the most opportunity to cut back. This is the high use season. During the winter, it's hard for a lot of people to cut back because they're already doing a pretty good job. When people start running their irrigation systems in the summer, that's when we have the opportunity to save. So we're talking about what outreach we might do to focus on high use and to help our customers conserve more during the dry months. Well, they're all dry months, but during the typical high use season. Okay, moving along to a related topic. The state water resources, the story statewide is that in spite of the governor's call for 20% reduction, not much is happening. People aren't reducing much. And that has created a lot of political pressure. There are areas that are in really dire straits, but overall I think the feeling is, oh, we're in this really serious drought and everybody's acting like there's no drought. So the State Water Resources Control Board has asked its staff to come up with some regulations that would impose statewide restrictions. And they've gotten quite a bit of feedback that, those shouldn't be in the form of allocations, or they should be more in the form of you can only water 2 days a week or something like that. So they're set to consider that on July 15th. It seems like everybody is feeling like they're going to do something. So we'll have some kind of statewide mandate that we will all have to somehow respond to. The most likely outcome, I think, would be restrictions on outdoor irrigation. And that's the first thing a lot of districts go to. So under those regulations, we would somehow be responsible for implementing and trying to enforce those restrictions. How we do that, I don't know, but I think everyone expects something to happen on July 15th. Finally, moving away from the drought to something that seems to be going on just about as long, our administration building remodeling project. We'd selected a contractor based on looking at 2 and getting a more attractive price from one. He told us a couple of weeks ago that after, supposedly working on things for a couple of weeks, that he was unable or unwilling to meet our payment bond requirement, which is a statutory requirement for us. There's no way for us to waive that for any project exceeding $25,000. So we switched over to the other contractor who's more expensive but also much more organized, and we're close to an award. I think it should happen this week with those folks that have gone through our standard contracts, haven't come back with any changes. They're able to get the bonds that we need. And we hope, I said during the week of July 7th, we're hoping that construction could start next week. We've got the permit ready from the city, so everything's pretty much in place. There's just a lot of detail required to put together this project. So we're hoping, and we're still determined that we will have the September board meeting in our old building, in our upgraded old building. Now, we may be surrounded by unfinished drywall and things like that, but we're definitely going to have the board meeting in there. And that's, if nobody has any questions about any of that, that's concludes my report.
Joe?
The highlight of the month, two actually, the El Granada Tank 2 renovation is just about complete. Today, the tank has been put online. It's been online for about 2 weeks now, working well. So that's good. We just paved. They just did the paving just today and yesterday. It's not permeable paving, but which the conversation tonight at this meeting will relay to our district engineer that when we do the next one, which will be El Granada Tank 3, we should include that in the bid packet. We'll be putting the fence up next week and hitting the punch list items, then this project can be closed. It's been a long time. The other thing that I thought was noteworthy this month is staff is attempting to make the maximum use of Denniston that we can. Normally we couldn't run it in the summer because of the low flows in Denniston Creek. But we are we're working pretty closely with the farmer, Dave Leah. We're able to, we think we'll be able to run the plant 1 or 2 days every week before the reservoir drafts down where our farmer will start having anxiety. So you know, we could run it for 1 or 2 days. It'll start dropping and we'll stop and then it'll fill back up again, and everybody will be happy. So I'm really pleased with that. So if you have any other questions on any of the things in my report, I'm glad to answer.
Sounds good, thank you.
On the future bids with this permeable surface level, I'd like to suggest that you look into doing it as an alternate bid with the main bid so that you guys can make a choice of recommendation. In other words, if the base bid is whatever we normally use and then they add an alternate add-on to it,
very good,
then you at least know how much it's going to be, because if it's a whole lot more, we may feel differently about it.
Yes.
And then we don't have to go back and rebid the original specs.
Very good. Thank you.
Kathleen?
Dave went over the water supply conditions update, so won't duplicate that. Some good news, we finally got some reimbursement on the Prop 84 grant money. So through BOSCA on behalf of the agencies that participate in the rebate programs applied for these grants, these regional grants, and so we finally have started to see the money come back to us. So so that'll be very helpful, help fund more rebates, and it's always a good thing to get money back. And then the other item was our annual water quality report for calendar year 2013 was mailed out to our service area. And you'll notice the design this year was different. We used a design firm to help us put it together, something that's a little more attractive and easier easier to put together. It doesn't need to be stapled, it can just be folded. So I'm interested in feedback to see if you think it was a successful design attempt, and if it's easy to read, and will work in the future. So the report is also available online. It's available in Spanish and English. And I think that's about it for me, unless you have any questions.
Just as a comment, I really liked the layout this year. I thought it looked better than last year.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Anything else? Gentlemen?
Under Director Agenda Items.
Yes, sir.
Since this happened more than a week ago, so I forgot, on the Director's reports, if I could just add, to share that I was up in the Yosemite area about, I guess it's been 3 weeks ago, and had the opportunity to spend the day up at Hetch Hetchy and see, I'd never been up there before. See the dam and the reservoir.
Go swim?
I did not. It looked like an awfully long drop down the front of that dam. It got a little scary. 320 feet is more than my swan dive can handle. But it's really beautiful, and I hate to say this out loud, being on the board of a water district. I guess I can understand what the environmentalists are upset about, but it is really, it's quite an impressive
It's
operation.
a good spot to visit.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Nothing from me.
That's it for me. With that, I'll close the meeting.
So when's another broadcast day?